The elevator doors opened onto the children's floor at Barnes & Noble, and I waddled out like a ship coming into harbor, one hand on my lower back, the other wrapped around a crumpled list my OB had scribbled for me. Sleep training basics, feeding schedules, what to expect week by week. 8 months pregnant, swollen ankles and compression socks, I felt ridiculous and brave at the same time. The books smelled like paper and vanilla. I told myself I was here for knowledge, not hope. Hope had left the apartment when my marriage did. I steered my belly toward a table stacked with glossy covers, bright animals, tiny socks, smiling models with impossible hair. Stroller parking was taped to the wall. I smiled at the joke, then winced at the baby's kick. Okay, I whispered. We'll pick the book and go. A hand reached for the same title as mine, The First 40 Days. Our fingers bumped. I smelled the citrus cologne before I looked up. Emma, he said. The book slipped from my hand and thudded to the carpet. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't. My body went into that slow freeze where you hear your pulse and nothing else. My ex-husband stood close enough to count the gold flecks in his brown eyes, the eyes I had once memorized before sleep. He wore the navy coat I had picked out, better fitting now that he'd lost weight. Beside him, a woman with a glossy chestnut bob gently laced her fingers through his. She was young in the way I hadn't felt in a while, skin untroubled, posture like a held note. Hi, I managed, my tongue thick. You're here. We're just looking, he said, and his smile landed somewhere between polite and sorry. This is Lily. Lily. The name fit the cardigan, the soft pink nails, the subtle gold hoops. She squeezed his hand and then lifted something in her other hand. A notebook. My notebook. Blue cloth cover rubbed down in the corners. The elastic band stretched too far. The faint coffee ring on the back from that morning last winter when I spilled a mug and laughed about the stain looking like a moon. She was holding my pregnancy journal. Great taste in notebooks, like she'd rehearsed being friendly. Vintage. My mouth went dry. Where did you get that? She blinked. This? Oh, she glanced at him. We're keeping some of the boxes from the old place, he cut in too fast. It got mixed up. No, I had packed that journal myself, laid it on top of my maternity leggings like a small, beating heart. Each entry started with Dear Little Bean, because the sonographer called the baby a bean on my first ultrasound. Dear Little Bean, today I felt you flutter at 18 weeks. Dear Little Bean, your dad says your feet will be big like his. Dear Little Bean, we picked a name we won't say out loud yet because we want it to be ours for a while. I stared at the notebook in Lily's hand and felt the baby roll like a seal in the tide. My breath turned shallow. I pressed my palm to the side of my belly where a heel pressed out, sharp and insistent. How? Mixed up? He shrugged. You left so fast. You asked me to, I said, and the word asked came out tasting like rust. 2 teenage girls drifted through the aisle, laughing softly. I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, and the movement sent a pinch through my lower back. The store hum closed in. The escalator, the distant espresso machine, a toddler arguing with a parent about a stuffed giraffe. Everything normal, ordinary, unremarkable. Except my ex-husband was here with his new girlfriend, holding the notebook where I'd written out the life I thought we would share. Lily shifted her tote on her shoulder. A white envelope peeked out, Harborview Women's Health printed in teal. A date stamped on the corner, 2 weeks after he'd left. I tried not to stare. Tried not to wonder. He crouched and picked up the first 40 days, then held it out to me like a peace offering. His wedding ring was gone. The tan line remained, faint as a ghost. Here, he said softer. For you. I didn't take it. I can buy my own book. Lily smiled again, smaller. We wanted to thank you for the crib, she said. What crib? The one shipped to our place last week. The note was signed, E. The ground tilted. My name and his began with the same letter. He cleared his throat. That wasn't. I started, then stopped. We had closed the joint credit card. I had triple-checked. If a crib had gone anywhere, it hadn't been on my dime. But the idea lodged in my chest like a splinter. Something was moving without me, using my initial, my history, my lists. I didn't send you a crib. Oh. Her lashes fluttered, and she looked at him again. He stared at the book still hovering between us. We should go, he said. We don't want to be in your way. I felt the baby push again, a drum against my ribs. I nodded once, like someone nodding to a song they aren't hearing. they turned. As they did, the elastic band slid off the blue notebook and a yellow sticky note peeled away and fluttered down like a leaf. I caught it before it hit the ground. On it, in my ex-husband's handwriting, was a single word we had promised never to tell anyone until birth. Oliver. He had written the name we chose. I looked up too fast. He had already guided Lily toward the register. The sticky note stuck to my thumb. I pressed it against my palm like a secret bleeding through and felt heat rush to my face, not from embarrassment this time, but from something meaner. I had lost a marriage. Had I also lost the right to my child's name? A clerk wearing a green apron appeared beside me, voice hushed, eyes kind. "Ma'am, are you okay? We have seats by the window." "I'm fine," I said, though spots of light swam at the edges of my vision. I need a minute." The clerk gestured to the seating area where a mural of clouds tried too hard to be soothing. I walked there slowly, one hand on the belly, the other clenched around a sticky note that felt suddenly heavier than paper had any right to be. I lowered myself into a chair near the window and pretended to study the stroller parking sign again. The baby calmed, as if the chair had wheels in the ocean and we'd finally found a gentle current. People moved around me with the quiet focus of Saturday errands. I could have been any pregnant woman in any city, pausing between choices. No one could see the secret pressed into my palm. I peeled the sticky note away and slid it into my wallet, behind my insurance card. I told myself not to cry in a bookstore. I told myself breathing was a skill I could learn again. I took out my phone and opened the Notes app where I kept lists. Pediatricians. My therapist recommended. Questions for my next OB visit. Things to fix in the apartment before baby. My thumb hovered over his name out of muscle memory. I deleted the contact months ago, but the emptiness where it once sat felt like a missing tooth. My tongue still searching. I typed instead. Ask lawyer about personal property taken from apartment. It looked cold on the screen. It also looked like survival. When I glanced up, I saw them at the registry kiosk by the register. The store had a touchscreen where people could check items purchased, shipping addresses, expected delivery dates. Lily leaned into the screen. He stood behind her, hand at the small of her back. They look like a picture in a frame you buy before you replace the sample couple with your own. I shouldn't have, but I stood. Curiosity isn't always a sin. Sometimes it's a pulse. I walked over slowly, like someone wandering. There were 2 kiosks. One was free. I tapped the screen and searched last name Bennett, his. A list popped up. Bennett and Lily, baby Oliver. My heart stuttered at the combination. I clicked. Items appeared with perky checkmarks. Silicone bottles, swaddles, bassinet. Purchased, crib. Shipping address, not my old apartment, not his last bachelor address, but a new one on a street I didn't recognize in Brooklyn. A blue bar at the top said, Public Registry. Public. I looked to my right. He didn't see me. Lily raised the blue notebook to show him something, finger-tapping a line I knew by memory. Dear little bean, your dad cried when he heard your heartbeat. He placed a quick kiss on her hair. The ache in my sternum sharpened into something unfamiliar. Not jealousy, not exactly. It was ownership of my words, my ink, my quiet nights writing by the lamp while he snored. Do you need help with the kiosk? The green-aproned clerk from earlier asked, appearing like a secret thought made human. I swallowed. No. Thank you. Actually, does the store allow people to turn in found journals, like a lost and found? Sure, she said. Happens all the time. What if it's not lost? I said, my voice steadier than my hands. Just misplaced in the wrong life. Her eyes widened a fraction, then softened back. If it belongs to you, she said gently, it should be with you. I could have told the clerk everything. How he asked for a separation on a Tuesday after a routine appointment. How he said it wasn't about the baby, but moved out that night. How my apartment echoed for weeks afterward, like it had questions carved into its walls. Instead, I nodded and turned back to the kiosk. A new notification appeared on the registry screen. Appointment scheduled. Harborview Women's Health, prenatal counseling. Date, the same day he had asked me for a separation. Breath snagged in my throat. I glanced at their tote. Harborview. Lily's envelope. The clinic whose logo had glinted teal from her bag. The picture focused. You okay? The clerk asked. I need to ask someone something, I said, and before I changed my mind I crossed the short distance to them. Lily, I said, because I could say her name without cracking now. That notebook. She turned, surprised but not defensive, like she hadn't imagined consequences yet. Oh, were you still? It's mine, I said. The coffee ring, the elastic, the inside cover with the sticker from our old landlord, my handwriting on page 1. It's private. He stepped between us a half-inch. Old habit, protection and boundary in one movement. Emma, we can talk later. We won't, I said. The tightness in my chest broke open into clarity. Give me the notebook. Lily looked at him. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance? Guilt? Calculation? Then smoothed away. He took the notebook from her and held it out. As I reached, a sheet slipped loose from the back pocket and fluttered onto the kiosk shelf. It was a lab order. My name at the top. Non-invasive prenatal screening. The blood test. Ordered by Harborview. The date again, the day he asked me to leave. My stomach dropped. I didn't do the test through Harborview. My OB handled mine at Mount Sinai. I had the email receipt. I had the memory of rolling up my sleeve in a quiet clinic with a nurse named Gwen humming Fleetwood Mac. I don't understand, I said, staring at my own name on a clinic I had never visited. Why do you have this? He reached for the paper, but I was quicker for once. Pregnant, yes. Slow, sometimes, but my hand closed over the lab order with a speed born of alarm. Did you run a test? Emma, he said, lowering his voice as if the word might calm the air. Let's not do this here. Lily touched his arm. You said it was just to be sure, she murmured, not quietly enough. You said she'd already. He cut her a look that could slice. Lily, to be sure. Already. Words like loose floorboards over something deep. The room rearranged itself, the toddler crying near the stuffed animals, the espresso steam hiss, the clerk pretending not to listen. My baby shifted, as if turning toward the sound of his father's voice. I tucked the lab order and the notebook against my chest. Did you test my baby without telling me? Silence shaped itself around us, thin and sharp. He exhaled through his nose. I did what I had to do to get clarity, he said. For everyone. Clarity, I repeated, tasting the word. By stealing my blood work? By taking my journal? By putting our baby's name on a registry with someone else? Lily's cheeks flushed. We can change the name, she whispered, like that was the part that hurt me most. I stared at the two of them, this careful new unit standing where my old life had stood. I felt something settle in me then, low and heavy and strangely cool. The crying toddler giggled. A whipped cream canister hissed. The world did not end. It turned. Keep the crib, I said, each syllable crisp. You're going to need someplace to stack all the things you bought with my stories. I turned before he could answer and walked back to the chairs, the notebook pressed to my side like a rescued limb. The clerk met my eyes and stepped aside to give me space. I lowered myself down and breathed through a tight wave that might have been a contraction or just anger with a heartbeat. Out the window, the city kept moving. Buses shouldering through puddles, someone in a yellow beanie hurrying, a couple arguing kindly over coffee lids. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. I opened the notebook to the inside cover, fingers shaking in a small, contained way. There was my handwriting. There was the first entry. There were the ultrasound photos tucked into the pocket, one missing, the one where the technician had typed, "Hi, Mom." In the margin of week 12, a different pen. His. Ask Harborview about microdeletions. Below it, a time. And then circled, Oliver? He had been planning clarity. He had been planning without me. The baby pushed again, but this time I pressed back, palm to skin as if we were agreeing. If he wanted clarity, he would have it. From me. From a judge. From anyone who could pronounce the word without stealing. I closed the notebook, slid it into my tote, and stood. The clerk gave me a look that asked a question without words. I nodded once. I had thought I came for baby books. I had walked into my ex-husband's carefully arranged story. Now I had a different list. On it, one line wrote itself. I thought I'd lost a husband. What else had he taken without me noticing? I left the bookstore with the blue notebook zipped into my tote, the yellow sticky note tucked like a splinter behind my insurance card, and the lab order folded twice in my coat pocket where the fabric was thinning. Outside, New York had decided to be gray. Cabs hissed by, tires slicing through shallow puddles. A bus groaned to a stop. I stood on the curb and let the city's noise rise around me until my heartbeat grew bored of keeping up. I called an Uber because the subway stairs had turned into a rumor this late in pregnancy. The driver asked if I wanted the heat higher. I said yes, and pretended the warmth could climb into my bones and fix something there. Astoria slid past, laundromats breathing steam, deli windows fogged, a father stooping to zip a toddler into a too-stiff coat. My building smelled like old paint and last night's garlic. The elevator shuddered. On the 4th floor, a package waited at my door like a dog that had taught itself patience. I nudged it inside with my foot. The apartment was small but tidy. The crib leaned in its flat box along the wall, a Craigslist find I hadn't had the heart to assemble alone. On the fridge, a magnet held up a checklist I'd made in black Sharpie. Install blackout curtains, wash newborn clothes, draft birth plan, call mom, pick a pediatrician. Next to the list, a sonogram picture smiled in its alien way. Hi, Mom, the tech had typed on the image like a joke. I had laughed then, the sound of it surprising me. I lowered onto the couch, shoes still on, and rested the notebook on my belly. The baby shifted as if to say, again? Another story? Don't worry, I thought. This one's for us. My name is Emma Hart. I am 33, late to confidence, early to lists. I grew up near Cleveland, with a mother who worked nights at the hospital, and a father who slipped out before dawn more often than he stayed. When I was little, I wrote letters to people I missed and slid them under the refrigerator magnets, because that's where important things lived in our house. When I moved to New York at 24, I worked at a publishing house, copy editing other people's sentences, while my own collected in journals like pressed leaves. I married at 29 to a man who could charm a room and remember everyone's coffee order. I am 8 months pregnant with our first child. I am divorced on paper, but not yet in court. I have a stubborn back, a soft heart, and a talent for pretending I'm fine until I'm not. I met Ethan at a volunteer book drive our company sponsored in a church basement. Fluorescent lights, bad coffee, good intentions. He was the kind of handsome that photographs well and laughs easily. He told me he loved that I carried a notebook everywhere, like I was archiving the world. He said he felt safe when I made lists, that my order calmed his chaos. He stood behind me when we brushed our teeth, and he rested his chin on my head, and I thought, this is what home feels like. He worked in finance for a tech firm that inflated and deflated with the speed of weather. He was careful with money and generous with gestures. He picked the ring himself, simple, oval, not loud. On the day we signed the prenup, he brushed my hair behind my ear and said it was just paperwork. The lawyer slid me a stack of pages, and I initialed where the tabs told me to. I trusted him. I told myself that's what love was, believing someone when they say the future is a plan and not a place you survive. On the coffee table, my phone lit up with a voicemail from the unknown number that buzzed at the bookstore. I put a hand over the baby, a reflex like shielding them from a draft, and pressed play. Hi, Ms. Hart. This is Cassie calling from Harborview Women's Health. This message is for Emma Hart. Birth date 2892. We're calling to let you know your non-invasive prenatal screen results are ready in the portal. We have guardian consent on file from your spouse of record. If you have any questions about accessing your results, please call us back. I tapped pause. The room tilted, not in the bookstore way, but in the quieter way of a hallway when a door opens where you didn't expect one. Guardian consent on file from your spouse of record. Spouse of record. That was a phrase that lived in forms and offices, not in the soft places of my life. It meant that whatever he had done it with a signature. Maybe mine. I searched my email for Harborview. Spam coughed up a welcome to your patient portal message from 3 weeks ago. The email address on file wasn't mine. The line for alternate email was blank. There was a PDF attached. Chain of custody, specimen transfer. My fingers trembled, just a little. I opened it. The form was grainy, scanned, but my name was clear at the top. Under relationship, someone had written self. Under authorized party, someone had added spouse. A scribbled signature sprawled across the bottom with a flourish I recognized. Not because it was mine, but because it was a practiced copy of the way I looped the H in Hart when I was rushing. The date matched the day he asked me to leave. The baby pressed a heel outward like a question. I know, I whispered. I know. Anger had burned hot in the store. What moved through me now was different. Cooler. He had not just taken a notebook, he had taken my name and pressed it onto a form like a stamp. He had rewritten a boundary and called it clarity. I called the number back. A hold melody played something cheerful and inoffensive. Harborview Women's Health, a woman answered. This is Cassie. Hi, I said. I'm Emma Hart. I received a message about results. I didn't authorize anyone to access my records. Let me pull up your chart, she said. Keys clicked fast. Okay, Miss Hart, I do see your NIPS panel. It was ordered by Dr. Shaw. It shows guardian consent due to a status field indicating spouse of record. I'm separated, I said, and heard how small the word sounded. We're not legally divorced yet, but he's not on my medical forms. I never switched to your clinic. My OB is at Mount Sinai. I'm sorry, she said, voice softening. Because it's genetic information, we have strict protocols. I can't release details without verifying identity. I can tell you the results are available in the portal. I don't have portal access, I said. The email listed isn't mine. A pause. I can submit a request to update your contact information, she said. But I'm seeing a scanned consent form. It looks like your signature. It's not, I said. The words snapped in the air. It's not. Another pause, deeper. We can flag the chart, she said carefully. We can mark it as potentially compromised and require in-person ID. Miss Hart, do you feel safe? I looked at the crib box leaning against the wall like a flat promise. Yes, I said, but I need documentation of the form, of the access. We can prepare a disclosure log, she said. It will list who accessed and when. Please do, I said. I gave her my real email. She promised to send what she legally could. When I hung up, I stared at the ceiling where a crack traced a lazy river across plaster. My hand went to my belly again, the way it did now when I needed to remember my body was building something even while my life was trying to fall apart. The package by the door had been patient long enough. I slid a scissors along the tape. Inside, a small box nested among air pillows. The label read, Oliver Wall Decals, Custom Script. A note tucked under the clear film said, For your dream nursery. Love, E. The handwriting was not mine. I sat back on my heels. It could have been me. It wasn't. The return address was a warehouse in Jersey. The order email in tiny font at the bottom belonged to a domain I recognized from his office. His new company perk included bulk discounts and free customizations. He was making a nursery from pieces of me with the efficiency of a corporate account. I took a photo of the label, the note, the decals. Evidence. Then I slid the box back under the couch as if hiding a weapon from a child. I messaged my therapist, Dr. Wells. Emergency spot if possible. Something's escalated. Harborview used forged consent. The 3 dots appeared then. Can do 7 p.m. telehealth. Remember, document everything. Breathe. You're not alone. Not alone. The words set down like a stool for a tired body. I opened my notebook and wrote the date at the top. I wrote, Today I remembered that love without boundaries is just permission for someone else's impulse. Then I made a new list. Not the hopeful kind on the fridge, but the kind that changed the weather inside me. Email Harborview for disclosure log. Request copy of consent form. Call a lawyer. Not the one we used for the prenup. Someone who works for women who are tired of apologizing. Change locks. Landlord owes me a door fix. Ask for it today. Update OB on possible medical record violation. Choose a name for the baby that I will say out loud to the world when he arrives, whether or not anyone else approves. I scrolled through my contacts to M. I had added her number after Dr. Wells said her name like a solution. Maya Ortiz. Family law. I pressed call before I could think too long. Ortiz Law, a voice answered, quick, efficient. Hi, my name is Emma Hart. I'm 8 months pregnant. My ex may have forged medical consent related to prenatal testing. I heard my own voice and thought I sounded like a narrator reading an emergency brochure. I need help. There was a rustle of paper, a shift to attention. I'm glad you called, Miss Hart, she said. Can you come Monday at 10 a.m.? In the meantime, do not contact him directly if you can help it. Save everything. Do you share any accounts? No, I said, then paused. We did. I closed them. Good, she said. Send me the prenup. Bring the lab order, the consent form if you get it, and any evidence of identity misuse. We'll talk emergency protective orders if necessary. Okay, I said. My shoulders dropped a fraction. Okay. After I hung up, the apartment felt slightly less small. The baby hiccuped, a tiny rhythmic knock I had come to love. You're okay, I told him. We're okay. My neighbor, Mrs. Klein, knocked on my door like she always did. 2 quick taps, then one apologetic one. I opened it to her cinnamon breath and kind eyes. I brought soup, she said, lifting a plastic container like it was something holy. You looked pale in the hallway yesterday. You are a conspiracy of angels, I told her, and her laugh wrinkled her whole face. She peered at my belly, then at me. He's kicking? Like he's trying to write his own name, I said, and winced at the sentence as it left my mouth. Her expression shifted but didn't pry. She placed the soup on my counter and squeezed my forearm with a grip that said she had held on to people who needed holding. Call me if you feel strange, she said. Anytime. Night is just day with less light. When she left, I ate 2 spoonfuls standing up. I turned the decals box so the label didn't show. I took a photo of the prenup from my file folder and emailed it to Maya with the subject line. I didn't read this right the first time. The afternoon drifted toward evening. A text buzzed from an unknown number. We should talk. Another followed. This is Ethan. Can we be civil? Then you're making this harder than it needs to be. I stared at the screen until the text bubble timed out. I didn't reply. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and set it face down on the second shelf of the bookcase, somewhere between What to Expect and a slim novel about a woman who learned she was stronger than she feared. At 6:59, I logged into Dr. Wells's telehealth. Her face filled the screen. Kind, precise, the kind of therapist who asks questions like a good editor. I saw your message, she said. Start wherever you want. I told her about the bookstore, the notebook, the sticky note, the registry, the lab order, the forged signature, the call to Harborview, the decals labeled with a name that had been a promise and now felt like a theft. I didn't cry. Not because I was brave, but because my anger had learned to stand still and listen. She nodded. You did 3 important things today, she said. You reclaimed your story. You sought legal protection, and you made a boundary. What if I'm late? I asked. What if the damage is already done? Then we deal with what's next, she said. We don't negotiate with reality, we respond to it. After our session, I turned off the lamp. The apartment went soft. I lay on my side, a pillow between my knees like every article suggests. One hand on the baby, one on the notebook I had slid under my pillow like a child with a secret. In the dark, a thought came clear as a streetlight. If he could forge a signature, he could forge a narrative. I had been careful with hope. Now I would be careful with proof. And when the baby stirred, I whispered, not the name we once chose, but an old one from my grandmother's stories, a placeholder no one else had touched. It felt like locking a door and opening a window at the same time. If he had taken my consent on paper, what else had he taken while I was busy being reasonable? Morning arrived like it had been waiting for me to open my eyes before it exhaled. The apartment was quiet except for the radiator clicking its small arguments with winter. I rolled out of bed slow, one hand on my belly, and shuffled to the kitchen. Oatmeal, banana, prenatal vitamin, a glass of water big enough to feel like a dare. I texted my landlord about the lock. He texted back faster than usual. Super can come by at 10. Do you still want Bennett on the spare? My stomach did a small, mean flip. No, I typed. Remove him from everything. I added a please because old habits die polite. By 10, the Super Greg was kneeling at my door with a new deadbolt and a bag of metal that clinked like change. He pointed at the strike plate. See those scratch marks, he said. Somebody's been missing the keyhole lately, or trying in a hurry. I crouched as far as 8 months would allow. Scratches white against brass, small but stubborn. Not a story, evidence. Can you change the mailbox lock too? I asked, if that's a thing. Sure, Greg said. Landlord will charge 20, but I can waive him off. You're about to have a baby. He worked while I stood in the hallway and shifted my weight from foot to foot like a ship finding balance. A neighbor lugged groceries past, smiling at my belly like it was a shared project. When Greg finished, he gave me 2 new keys and a card with a code for a keypad we didn't have last week. Upgrade, he said, half proud. Also, your husband came by last Wednesday asking me to let him in. Said he needed to measure for a dresser. I told him he wasn't on the work order. He didn't like that. He's not my husband, I said, then softened. Not anymore. Greg nodded, filed the information somewhere between sympathy and protocol. If he tries again, he said. I call you first. or I don't open the door. After he left, the apartment felt different. Not safer, exactly, more mine. I walked the rooms like they were new inventory. The crib box, the stack of diapers I'd bought on sale, the bookshelf I planned to secure to the wall. I added anchor furniture to my list and then underlined, "Don't be afraid to ask for help." Around noon, a cramp surprised me. Sharp, low, enough to make me lean against the counter and breathe the way the book said. It passed, then another came, tighter but brief. I called my OB's office, embarrassment in my voice like I'd failed a test. "Come to triage just to be safe," the nurse said. "Hydrate. Bring your bag if that makes you feel better." I took a lift to Mount Sinai with my tote, a bottle of water, and the blue notebook zipped in like a passport. At intake, I gave my name and birth date and tried to keep my face neutral. The receptionist typed and her expression shifted, just slightly. "Is your spouse Ethan Bennett?" she asked. "No," I said. "Separated." "Okay," she clicked. "Your chart shows him as primary contact and birth partner. Do you want to update that?" "Yes," I said, the word lifting my breath. "Remove him. Add my neighbor, for now. Mrs. Klein." I read out her number. "And my mother. She'll fly in closer to the due date." The receptionist nodded. "We'll also put a note to require photo ID for any visitor claiming to be family." When I was hooked up to a monitor in a small room with a pastel painting of a field that didn't exist, Nurse Gwen, who really did hum Fleetwood Mac, wrapped the elastic bands around my belly and found the baby's heartbeat. A fast, bright gallop filled the room. "Looks good," she said. "Looks like he's saying, 'Calm down, Mom.'" I laughed once, small but real. "I'll try." The cramps eased into nothing, false labor doing its rehearsal. While I lay there, the hospital's privacy officer, Miss Levin, knocked and slipped in. Her blazer was navy. Her gaze was kind but practiced. "Miss Hart," she said. "I understand you have concerns about unauthorized access to your medical information?" "Yes," I said, feeling my pulse in my wrists. "Another clinic, Harborview, has results tied to my name. I didn't sign their consent. They said my spouse of record did." She sat, opened a folder, and folded her hands. "We can request a disclosure log from Harborview," she said. "Separately, I can show you our access log. We record the date, time, and user for every chart view." She turned the screen toward me. A neat column of entries scrolled by. Mount Sinai staff, my OB, a social worker from 2 months ago when Dr. Patel had flagged my anxiety. And then, not Mount Sinai, portal access, external user. The timestamps lined up with the day he'd asked for a separation. The IP address field wasn't a company name, but it matched a block Gwen recognized as a downtown shared workspace. "Can I get this printed?" I asked, my voice small with gratitude. "Yes," Miss Levin said. "We'll also add a break the glass alert. Anyone accessing your chart triggers an internal review." Gwen glanced at me. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "It feels bureaucratic until it feels like protection." Before I left, I stopped at the visitor desk. "Please add a note," I told the guard. "No one named Lily is permitted without my verbal consent. She may use my last name. She isn't family." "Done," he said, typing with the authority of a gatekeeper who knew their power. Back outside, the gray had decided to pretend at sun. I walked 2 blocks to a bakery because food tasted better when I chose it on purpose. A croissant, a soup, a tiny orange because my therapist would approve. I sat by the window where the city practiced being beautiful without trying. My phone buzzed. An email from Harborview. Disclosure log attached. A PDF bloomed. Accesses by E. Bennett using a proxy email that looked like mine with one swapped letter. A scanned consent form attached again. And a note. Guardian consent verified by phone. Caller identified as spouse. I felt my heartbeat climb but stay mostly in its lane. I forwarded everything to Maya with the subject line evidence too. Then I opened the scanned consent and looked harder. The H in heart looped left instead of right. My signature knew which way it liked to curl. Whoever had imitated me had done it from memory, not muscle. Another email pinged. Subject line, Mount Sinai pre-registration confirmation. "Thank you for completing pre-registration for delivery," it chirped. I hadn't done that yet. A link asked me to verify. I clicked and saw fields already filled. Primary support person, Ethan Bennett. Second support person, Lily Bennett. Bennett. I swallowed something bitter. I hit edit, deleted both names, added Mom and Mrs. Klein, and checked the box that said, "No partner present." A pop-up asked me to confirm. I did. The system saved. A quiet victory, but a necessary one. The bakery door chimed. A couple breezed in, arguing about vacation days and car seats. I looked down at the blue notebook in my tote. Inside, in the pocket, were the ultrasound photos, of which one, the one where the tech had typed "Hi Mom," was missing. I thought about Lily waving that page at Ethan in the bookstore. I imagined her reading my week 12 note where I wrote that I cried after seeing the heartbeat. I wondered if she thought she was inheriting something. I wondered who told her she could. My phone buzzed again. Good. Keep going. Do not contact him. Tomorrow we'll file a temporary order to protect medical decision-making and your residence. Send me the prenup now and any joint property list. I scanned the prenup and sent it. While the croissant flaked into a small mess, I skimmed the PDF I thought I knew. One clause I had skimmed before now stared bold. If either party withholds material medical information impacting the health of the child, custodial rights may be reviewed. I heard my own breath. Material medical information. He was building a case that I had hidden something by not sharing Harborview results I never authorized. He didn't need the truth. He needed paperwork with my name on it. I wrote to Maya, Clause 8, withholds medical info. They'll argue I did. Maya replied in a minute, we'll argue unauthorized access, coercion, and that you notified providers immediately. We'll also argue best interest of the child. Family court cares about conduct. Keep documenting. On the way home, I stopped by the hardware store and bought anchors for the bookshelf and a pack of outlet covers. I asked the cashier, a girl wearing eyeliner like armor, to carry the bag to the curb for me. She did without comment. New York understood that strangers could be kind in exactly the amount you needed. Back at the apartment, a parking ticket curled under the door. Not mine. The make and plate belonged to Ethan's car. Issued 2 nights ago. Street cleaning on my block. I took a photo and slid the paper into the folder I'd started labeled for court. If he'd been here, he wasn't just a signature on a form. He was a key scratching metal and a car idling near my building after midnight. I texted Mrs. Klein, can I put you as my emergency contact at the hospital? She responded with 3 exclamation points and, of course, I'll wear real shoes. In the late afternoon, I called my mom. We hadn't spoken about Ethan in weeks because every call tried to turn into a trial. I told her only what I could say without breaking. I'm fine. I lied softer than usual. He forged something. I'm handling it. She exhaled into the phone the way she did when she didn't have a fix but had love. Tell me what to bring when I fly in, she said. Just you, I said. And the story about Grandma naming babies after flowers she never planted. She laughed and the sound was a cardigan. Okay, Em. After we hung up, I installed the outlet covers and sat on the floor to sort tiny onesies by size because it made my brain quiet. The baby hiccuped again, polite, rhythmic. I took the decals box from under the couch and opened it. The script Oliver unfurled glossy and sure. I held it up to the wall and saw not a name, but a claim. In the notebook, under today's date, I wrote, I will choose a name when I meet you. Until then, we're a field with no signposts. Then, because I wanted something solid, I made another list. Hospital. Break the glass, visitor restrictions, emergency contacts updated. Home. Locks changed, mailbox changed, neighbor alerted. Legal. Prenup to Maya, evidence folder started, disclosure logs saved. Emotional. Ask for help, eat food, sleep if possible. At 6, another text from Ethan lit the screen I had face down. You're overreacting. This is about the baby, not you. A minute later, Lily is trying, don't make this ugly. I whispered to the room, no contact, like a spell that could keep the words from entering my blood. Before bed, I scrolled through the registry again, the one that said Bennett and Lily, baby Oliver. A new purchase had been added, hospital go bag. The gift message read, can't wait to meet you, little man. Aunt L. And I took a screenshot and saved it beside the parking ticket, the consent form, the logs. He wasn't just building a nursery, he was building a family vocabulary that tried to write me out. I slid the notebook under my pillow again and lay on my side. The baby pressed against my palm, and for the first time since the bookstore, my anger shifted into something steadier. A plan is not hope, but it can carry you until hope returns. As I turned out the light, a thought landed with clean weight. If Ethan used paper to take space in my medical and home life, the next place he would try to occupy would be the birth itself. He would show up with words like rights and clarity and best for the baby, carrying forms with my name misspelled just enough to pass. He would bring someone who called herself Aunt. I looked at the new deadbolt glinting in the streetlight and felt the smallest click inside me answer it. If he thought paperwork could replace consent, he was about to learn the difference between a signature and a mother's no. 3 days later, the city decided to snow. Not the cinematic kind, but the gray mush that makes every curb a gamble. I worked from home, proofreading a manuscript about leadership habits. While the radiator hissed like it disagreed with my edits, the baby shifted in slow waves. I pressed the spacebar with one hand and my lower back with the other. At 2 p.m., my phone lit up with an email from the court system. Case filing notification. Petition for custodial review. I read it twice, then a third time. Filed by Ethan Bennett. Grounds: concern over withheld medical information impacting child's health. Supporting exhibits attached. I clicked, breath shallow. Exhibit A, the Harborview NIPS report. Exhibit B, the prenup clause about medical disclosure. Exhibit C, a statement signed by Ethan Bennett claiming I refused to share results. Exhibit D, a personal account. Written by Lily Bennett, she'd taken his last name already, stating she was present for counseling sessions at Harborview and that I demonstrated instability and avoidance. My throat closed around air. I called Maya immediately. She answered on the first ring. You saw it? Yes, I said. My voice trembled with anger more than fear. He filed, he used Harborview. She called herself Bennett. Maya inhaled. Listen to me, we expected this. Filing doesn't mean winning, it means he's moving. We're already ahead. You flagged the forgery, you have documentation, you involved the hospital. This is him trying to paint a picture before you can. He filed while I'm 8 months pregnant, I whispered. Like timing is a weapon. Of course he did, she said. Control thrives on shock. We'll counterfile. We'll move for an emergency hearing if needed. Stay steady. The court notices steadiness. After the call, I sat on the couch with the blue notebook open on my lap. I flipped to the ultrasound pocket. Only 2 photos remained. The missing one, the hi mom, was still gone. I pictured it in Lily's hands, maybe glued into a scrapbook that wasn't hers. I pressed my palm to my belly. The baby pressed back. Agreement. Resistance. A rhythm we shared. That night, the door buzzer shrilled. My heart slammed once before I checked the monitor. Ethan, standing in the vestibule, coat dusted with snow, but expression rehearsed to look calm. He held a paper bag like a peace offering. Thai takeout, the kind we used to eat on Sundays with too much peanut sauce. I didn't buzz him in. The intercom crackled. Emma, he said, voice low, practice gentle. It's freezing. Let me up, just dinner, just talking. I pressed the button to speak. We don't have anything to talk about. You're making this harder than it has to be, he said, the edge showing. The baby deserves 2 parents, you know that. He deserves honesty, I said. You forged my name. Silence then. I did what I had to do. Behind him, Lily appeared, scarf wrapped neat, makeup unbothered by weather. She leaned into the camera's angle and smiled small. Emma, she said, as if we were co-parents in a sitcom. This isn't a fight, we just want to plan together. You used my sonogram photo in your registry, I said. You called yourself Bennett. You aren't part of this pregnancy. Her smile flickered, but didn't drop. I am now, she said softly, like it was inevitable. The baby moved hard enough that I caught my breath. Leave, I said into the intercom. If you try to enter, I'll call the police. Ethan's face hardened. He held up the paper bag. You're shutting me out. The court will see it. The court will see evidence, I said, and switched the intercom off. They stood in the vestibule another minute. Ethan's jaw worked. Lily touched his arm. Then they turned, the snow swallowing their silhouettes. I watched until the vestibule emptied, my pulse a steady hammer. The next morning, I woke to find a manila envelope slid under my door. No postage, just hand-delivered. Inside, copies of the Harborview results, highlighted sections about chromosomal microdeletions. A sticky note in Ethan's handwriting. You should have told me. We could have prepared. My stomach turned. I had never hidden results. I had never received them. On the back page, another note in Lily's script. I want him to grow up loved by all of us. The us sat heavy like a hand pressed on my chest. I added the envelope to my evidence folder. Then I opened the notebook and wrote, when a thief tells you they're helping, remember, whose house is missing furniture? Later, at Maya's office, she spread the documents across the table. "This is escalation," she said. "Good. Courts don't like escalation against pregnant women. It shows instability. We'll file to strike Exhibit A as fraudulent. Exhibit B is neutral. We'll argue it's being misused. Exhibit C is subjective. Exhibit D," she tapped Lily's statement, "is hearsay with no medical basis." "She called herself Bennett," I said, my throat thick. "She can call herself an astronaut," Maya said dryly. "Until there's a license, it's a fantasy. Even with a license, it doesn't grant parental rights." I exhaled for the first time that day. Maya handed me a clean folder. "Put everything in here. Court likes order. You'll like knowing it's not scattered." On the subway home, I felt the baby roll slow and deliberate. I whispered, "They're trying to write a story without us, but stories need witnesses, and I'm still here." When I got home, Mrs. Klein knocked with more soup. She glanced at the manila envelope on my counter and frowned. "Bad mail?" "Wrong address," I said. And she squeezed my arm again, like she knew better than to push. That night, I dreamt of signing my name over and over, each loop turning into someone else's hand. When I woke, the baby kicked, and I thought, signatures can be forged, but heartbeat can't. The hearing wasn't supposed to feel like theater, but the courthouse in Lower Manhattan always smelled like old wood and performance. I sat in the waiting area outside Family Court Part 32, belly like a planet in my lap, blue notebook tucked in my tote like armor. Maya leaned beside me, flipping through her binder with the calm of someone who treated chaos like paperwork. Across the hall, Ethan stood in a dark suit I once picked for him at Macy's. He looked every bit the respectable finance man, hair trimmed, jaw clean. Beside him, Lily wore cream, a shade that begged for sympathy. They spoke quietly, then laughed at something only they thought was funny. When Lily's hand slid through Ethan's arm, my chest tightened with the strange ache of watching someone wear jewelry that used to be yours. The clerk called the case. We filed in. The courtroom was smaller than TV had promised. No grand gallery, just rows of benches that smelled of polish, and a judge's bench elevated enough to remind everyone where power sat. Judge Kaplan adjusted her glasses, eyes moving like she'd already read the script. "Petition of Bennett versus Hart. Custodial review request," the clerk read. Maya stood. "Your Honor, my client is 8 months pregnant. The petitioner has filed based on fraudulent medical documents. We request immediate dismissal, or at minimum, evidentiary review." Ethan's lawyer, a sharp man with a tie too loud, rose. "Your Honor, the petitioner has grave concerns about the unborn child's health. Miss Hart has withheld genetic results and demonstrated erratic behavior. We have evidence, including lab work from Harborview Women's Health." He handed a packet to the clerk, who delivered it up like an offering. Judge Kaplan scanned, expression unreadable. "Miss Hart," the judge said, "did you withhold medical information from your spouse?" "No," I said, my voice trembling but loud. "Those results were obtained without my consent. My signature was forged. Mount Sinai confirmed I never authorized Harborview." Before Maya could add, Lily stood. She wasn't supposed to. The judge's brows rose. "Ma'am, you are?" "Lily Bennett," she said. The name hung like perfume. "I've attended counseling sessions with Ethan. I've seen Emma's instability firsthand. She screamed at us in public. She's refused to share basic preparations. She doesn't act like someone ready to be a mother." My throat burned. The room blurred at the edges. Maya rose like steel. "Objection, Your Honor. Miss Lily is not married to the petitioner. Her testimony is hearsay with no medical foundation, and her use of the name Bennett is inaccurate. We request her statement be struck." Judge Kaplan's gaze cut to Lily. "Do you have a marriage license, ma'am?" Lily faltered. "Not yet, but—" "Then your legal name is not Bennett," the judge said flatly. "Sit down." Lily's cheeks flushed, but she obeyed. Ethan's jaw clenched. The judge turned back to me. "Miss Hart, do you have documentation that your medical information was accessed without your consent?" "Yes," I said, and Maya handed over the disclosure logs, the forged consent, the IP addresses. Judge Kaplan studied them, lips pressed thin. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "these show your access through an email not belonging to Miss Hart. Do you dispute that?" Ethan's lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, my client acted out of concern for the child. He had reason to believe Miss Hart was hiding." The judge cut him off. "Concern does not authorize forgery, especially not of medical consent. That will be addressed separately." Relief loosened something in my chest. Then came the twist I hadn't braced for. Until we resolve this matter, Judge Kaplan said, the court will issue a temporary custody consideration order. Both parties are restricted from making unilateral medical decisions. Hospital access will be limited to the mother and one support person approved by the court. The words hit like a cold wave. Restricted from making unilateral medical decisions. That meant me too. My own choices bound by his petition, by his lie. Your Honor, Maya argued, my client is the mother, carrying this child. Restricting her autonomy puts her health and the baby's at risk. The restriction is temporary, Judge Kaplan said. We will reconvene post-delivery with full evidence. Until then, the hospital must be notified of joint interest. Joint interest. I gripped the edge of the table, nails biting wood. Ethan's mouth curved, subtle, but there. Lily touched his hand under the table like reward. I wanted to scream. Instead, I breathed. In through my nose, out through my teeth. The baby pressed against my ribs, as if reminding me who I was here for. When court adjourned, Maya leaned close. This is damage, but not defeat. He won today's headline, not the story. We'll appeal. We'll fight. In the hallway, reporters waiting for other cases snapped photos, and one lens caught me mid-breath, belly full and eyes red. Ethan looked polished, Lily serene. The picture would tell a story I hadn't chosen. Outside, the snow had turned to sleet. My coat clung heavy. Maya hailed a cab, her binder hugged to her chest. Listen to me, she said. What happened in there? It feels like betrayal twice over. But remember, court cares about documentation and conduct. You documented. He forged. That's conduct. This isn't the end. It's exposure. At home, I sat on the couch, coat still on, and opened the blue notebook. I wrote, Today, the court told me my voice weighs as much as his lies. But paper can be burned. A heartbeat can't. I closed the notebook. The baby hiccuped again. Small, steady taps. I whispered, We're still here. That's enough for now. The week after court felt like winter had moved into my bones. I woke each morning with the taste of the judge's words still in my mouth. Joint interest, temporary restriction. Words that should have belonged to contracts, not pregnancies. Every choice felt smaller. When I brewed tea, I wondered if chamomile would count as a unilateral medical decision. When I strapped on compression socks, I half expected someone to knock on my door and demand a second opinion. The baby, meanwhile, grew restless. His kicks had sharp edges now, his rolls like tidal waves against my ribs. I whispered, Don't worry, I'm still here. But part of me worried I wasn't. One night I dreamed of the delivery room. Bright lights. Nurses moving fast. Ethan at my side, clipboard in hand, signing forms before I could speak. Lily in the corner, holding the blue notebook, reading my words out loud as if they were hers. I woke gasping, hand clutching my belly, convinced for a moment that someone had stolen the baby while I slept. The panic attacks started small, racing pulse, dizzy tunnel vision. Then came the night I couldn't catch a full breath. Mrs. Klein found me sitting on the hallway floor, back against the wall, hands shaking. She called 911 before I could protest. In the ER, machines traced my heart, my oxygen. A doctor spoke calmly, Anxiety attack, baby's fine, you're safe. They offered Ativan. I refused, afraid of any pill touching the baby's bloodstream. Instead, I gripped the monitor wires and whispered, We breathe. We're still here. When Maya visited the next day, binder under her arm, she frowned at the hospital wristband still on my arm. He's trying to destabilize you, she said. Don't let him write this narrative. Document the panic, yes, but also document that you sought care, stabilized, and refused unnecessary meds. Courts respect mothers who protect. I nodded, but inside, shame pooled. I used to think resilience meant never breaking. Now breaking felt daily. The worst moment came at work. My editor called a meeting on Zoom. I logged in, hair brushed, smile rehearsed. Midway, Ethan's name appeared in the participant list. My stomach dropped. He worked finance, not publishing. Then the chat pinged. Nice nursery plans. Hope you're proofreading better than you parent. I froze. He'd hacked my work link. My boss frowned at my camera feed. I mumbled an excuse about connection issues and logged off, hands shaking. I forwarded the chat screenshot to Maya. She replied, Harassment. Save it. By evening, exhaustion pressed me down. I lay on the couch, staring at the decals box still shoved under the couch. The word Oliver gleamed through plastic, bold and taunting. I couldn't look at it anymore. I dragged it to the trash chute. the sound of cardboard scraping metal like a body leaving. But when I shut the chute, guilt pricked me. Was I throwing away my son's name, or reclaiming it? That night, I called Mom. I couldn't keep the brave voice. "I'm scared," I said, sobs ripping through. "What if he takes him from me? What if the court believes him? What if I'm not strong enough?" Mom was quiet, then steady. "Emma, you are stronger than you think. You carried him this far. You'll carry him further. Don't let his lies define your motherhood. You're the one awake at night, feeling every kick. That's not paperwork. That's love." I pressed the phone to my ear until the plastic felt warm. After we hung up, I opened the blue notebook. I wrote with shaking hands. Today I almost believed the lie that I'm unfit. But I remembered, fitness isn't paperwork. It's the hand on the belly at 3 a.m. The next morning, my reflection looked older, eyes swollen, but my spine straighter. I made oatmeal, drank water, and thought, I am not done. He wants me broken. I will bend, but I won't break. Still, the fear lingered like a second shadow. Every knock at the door startled me. Every email notification made my pulse spike. I slept in fits, waking to check the locks twice, sometimes 3 times a night. On Sunday, Mrs. Klein knocked again, this time with knitting needles and soft yarn. "For the baby," she said. "Keeps hands busy when the mind wants to spiral." I learned the rhythm: loop, pull, tighten. By evening, a crooked little square rested in my lap. Not perfect, but made by me. When I laid it beside the sonogram, the ache in my chest softened. Maybe resilience wasn't about never breaking. Maybe it was about picking up needles and trying anyway. As I drifted to sleep, one thought carried me. If he wants me weak, I'll show him strength in places he doesn't understand. It was Thursday morning when the email from Harborview finally arrived. Subject line: Disclosure Log Addendum. I opened it half expecting another bland spreadsheet of dates and IP addresses. But this one had an attachment. A scanned note from the intake nurse, scribbled in ballpoint, almost tossed off. Patient's spouse requested NIPS panel. Patient not present. Guardian consent form produced. Spouse accompanied by female identified as partner. Partner provided journal pages re family history. I froze. Journal pages. I rifled through the blue notebook on my coffee table. The back pocket was thinner than I remembered. Several entries missing. The ones where I'd written about my father's heart condition, my aunt's autoimmune disorder, the miscarriage my grandmother had whispered to me about once over tea. Private histories, turned into intake data. I pictured Lily at Harborview, sliding those pages across a counter, smiling politely as if she had the right. My words, my handwriting, my family's ghosts, offered as evidence. I printed the note, hands trembling, and sent it to Maya with the subject line: "They used my journal as medical proof." A reply came fast. "Excellent. This proves theft of property, fraudulent medical record creation. It moves us closer to criminal territory. Keep the original notebook safe. Court loves chain of custody. Criminal territory." The phrase tasted different than custody battle. Criminal meant consequences. That afternoon, Mrs. Klein knocked again, clutching her knitting bag. "Mail for you," she said, holding out a padded envelope. No return address. I slid it open with a butter knife. Inside, a glossy photo print of the missing sonogram, the one where the tech had typed "Hi, Mom," except across the top, written in Sharpie, were the words, "Hi, Lily." My breath caught. My knees gave. Mrs. Klein steadied me into a chair. "Someone is trying to unmake me," I whispered. On the back of the photo, another note in Ethan's handwriting: "This baby deserves stability. Choose cooperation, not chaos." Mrs. Klein's mouth tightened. "That's intimidation," she said flatly. "Keep it. Call your lawyer." I did. Maya's voice sharpened. "Perfect. We'll file a protective order." He crossed into harassment with tangible evidence. Later that evening, as I prepared for Dr. Wells's telehealth, my phone buzzed again. This time a number I didn't know. A voicemail dropped seconds later. I pressed play. A woman's voice. Hesitant. "Miss Hart? You don't know me. My name is Kara. I used to work at Harborview. I was there when your husband and his partner came in. They were insistent. The nurse was uncomfortable. I overheard Lily say, 'We'll prove she's unfit.' I thought you should know. I don't work there anymore, but I couldn't stay quiet. If you need me to testify, I will." I sat frozen, the phone pressed to my ear long after the message ended. A stranger had just confirmed my darkest suspicion. Their visits weren't about concern or clarity or preparation. They were about building a case to erase me. I played the message again, then forwarded it to Maya. Her reply, "This is gold, a witness. Save the voicemail, back it up, we'll subpoena if needed." I closed my eyes, one hand resting on the baby's steady rhythm. For the first time in weeks, the fear inside me shifted shape. Less like a storm, more like a current I could swim with. Because now, for the first time, I had more than defense. I had proof of their intent. That night, I wrote in the blue notebook. Twist of the day. The truth doesn't just live in me. It lives in strangers who overheard, in receipts they left behind, in arrogance they thought was invisible. They aren't careful. I am. I underlined it twice. Then I whispered to the baby, "They think they're writing our story. They don't know I've kept the pen." The voicemail from Kara wouldn't stop echoing. "We'll prove she's unfit." By morning, my anger had sharpened into something workable. I printed the message transcript, slipped it behind a plastic sleeve in my growing evidence binder, and texted Maya. "Can you meet Kara? I want her sworn statement." Maya replied a single word that felt like a door unlocking. "Yes." At noon, I met Kara in a coffee shop 2 blocks from Harborview. She was younger than I expected, hair in a messy bun, scrubs under a parka, eyes tired but clear. We chose a corner table. I ordered her a sandwich she insisted she didn't need. She ate half anyway, like the body knows before pride does. "I shouldn't have waited," she said, fingers whirring the paper straw wrapper. The day they came in, I felt wrong. I told my supervisor. She said the spouse can request records, but your name wasn't on the appointment. And the partner, Lily, brought pages she said were the patient's journal. I remember because I joked about HIPAA forms being allergic to journals. I slid the blue notebook closer on the table, not opening it. "They took pages from here." She nodded, eyes round with regret. "They photocopied them at intake. And," she hesitated then added, "your husband handed me a picture of an insurance card. A photo on his phone. I didn't want to see it, but he angled it like he was showing a pet photo. He scrolled so fast. I caught your name, your birth date, the plan number." He said, "She forgets things. I handle logistics." My stomach dropped, remembering the day I left, the whirlwind of boxes. I'd kept a folder labeled important, slid into a tote that vanished somewhere between our old apartment and the storage unit. I had told myself I mislaid it. Maybe I had, but not by accident. Kara pulled a folded sheet from her pocket, handwritten, dated, signed with her full name and number. "I wrote this after I quit," she said. I couldn't keep swallowing it. "I'll testify." The baby shifted under my ribs, a long, slow roll that felt like agreement. "Thank you," I said, and meant it with my whole chest. On my way home, I cut through the lobby of our old building. I told myself it was to ask about the storage unit key, but that was a lie I used to make the walk make sense. Marcus, the weekday doorman, looked up and startled into a smile. "Miss Hart," he said, "been a while. You look good, big, in a good way." "I'm close," I said, palm on my belly. He leaned, conspiratorial. "Hey, something came for you a while back. Got tossed into the wrong bin. I put it aside when I realized. You want it?" "Yes," I said, pulse picking up. He returned with a thin windowed envelope stamped Flexible Benefits Administrator. Inside, an HSA reimbursement summary. Claimant, Ethan Bennett. Dependent, spouse, Lily. Effective date, 3 weeks before the hearing. Category, durable medical equipment. Line items, crib, wall decals, Oliver, breast pump, prenatal vitamins. Submission method, mobile app. Receipt images, attached. At the bottom, a faint watermark of his company's logo winked like complicity. I sat on the lobby bench, bile rising. He wasn't just decorating a fantasy nursery. He was billing their nursery to a tax-advantaged health account that included my premiums, labeling consumer goods as medical equipment, adding a spouse on a benefit plan, and naming an unborn child, Oliver Bennett, as expected dependent with an EDD pulled from my chart. I took photos of every line. Marcus pretended to study the sports page and not my shaking hands. "You good?" he asked when I stood. "I'm documenting," I said. It sounded like a battle verb. Back in my apartment, I forwarded the HSA statement to Maya with the subject benefits fraud. HSA plus fake spouse plus expected dependent. Her reply came fast. "This is huge. ERISA violations plus fraud. We loop in corporate compliance. If his employer moves, he loses leverage plus credibility." I stared at the decals box in the trash chute memory and felt a cold, precise satisfaction. He had tried to build a case with my blood and ink. I could build one with his receipts. That afternoon, I stopped by my office to pick up a box of author galleys. In the elevator, I ran into Jay, our freelancer who sometimes covered for me on manuscripts. He hugged me gently, then stepped back, eyes flicking to my belly, then my face. "You hear about the intern?" he asked. "What intern?" I wasn't prepared for another thread. "Last fall, Lily," he said like the name should have meant nothing. "Your intern for 6 weeks? You CC'd her on the parenting titles because she said she wanted to learn. She quit in November. Said she'd gotten a job in healthcare. Small world. Ran into her at a launch party after, on your ex's arm. Weird vibe." The hallway narrowed, the air thinned. "She was my intern," I repeated, grasping the fact like a rail. He shrugged, winced. "I thought you knew." I didn't, or I had erased it because my brain had only so many shelves for betrayal. The memories slid back anyway. Lily fetching me a latte, asking about writing habits, eyes on my notebook when I jotted a line. She had complimented my pen. She had asked what we might name the baby if it was a boy. I had laughed and said we had a short list. She had said I love Oliver, like it was a bird she fed at a park. I reached my desk, sat, inhaled slow. On the corkboard above my monitor, a sticky note in my handwriting still clung. Intern feedback. Lily, smart, eager, too curious. I closed my eyes. Too curious. I had meant it kindly. She had translated it as permission. On instinct, I checked the shared drive folder I'd created for her last fall. Lily, research. Inside, a PDF titled Birth Plan Templates, another, Hospitals, Visitor Policies, and a doc with my initials that she had apparently copied, dated the week before Ethan asked me to leave. Prenatal checklist, draft. It wasn't mine, it was her recreation from what she'd seen on my desk. The last line, name, Oliver. I took screenshots. Evidence now, not nostalgia. I texted Maya, second twist. Lily was my intern. Access to my desk plus notebook. Files show she harvested my lists. Maya replied, pattern of exploitation. Great for narrative credibility. Add to binder. As if the universe wanted to drill the point home, my email pinged with an automated notice. Your benefits profile has been updated. I hadn't logged into his company's portal since separation, but I was still listed as spouse of record for Cobra until I switched to my own plan. The notice included a PDF for the open enrollment summary. I opened it and stared at the line, Spouse, Lily Bennett, pending verification. Under it, Dependent, Oliver Bennett, expected. The status said provisional with a verification deadline, post-due date. He was betting the baby would arrive before anyone asked questions. My fingers shook as I forwarded the notice to Maya and, because fury will make you brave, to compliance at his company domain with a polite subject, potential benefits, misrepresentation, documentation attached. I wrote one line, please see attached summary reflecting non-spouse listed as spouse and unborn child added provisionally. I am the legal spouse of record and the mother. I did not authorize these changes. I CC'd Maya. I CC'd myself. I CC'd an inbox I created on the spot, emma.hart.evidence at a free mail service, because even order can be a small rebellion. An hour later, compliance wrote back. Fiamma. Thank you for bringing to our attention. We take these matters seriously. We will investigate. Do not contact this inbox further. A case manager will reach out. It read like bureaucracy. It felt like a fuse. At 5 p.m. my phone rang, unknown number. A woman introduced herself as Rena Chen, corporate compliance investigator. She asked 3 questions in a tone that meant she already knew the answers. Were you listed as spouse on Mr. Bennett's plan? Did you authorize additions? Are you currently pregnant? Then she said, we have received receipts submitted as HSA eligible expenses for items shipped to an address associated with Ms. Lee, last name redacted. We'll be interviewing Mr. Bennett tomorrow. I want to be clear. We do not require your involvement, but your documentation is helpful. I sat on the couch, hand on my belly, and felt something inside me stand up straighter. Thank you, I said. Look at the Harborview bills too. The plan covered some visits. We are, she said. If there was improper access of PHI via the plan, that's a separate issue. For what it's worth, Miss Hart, I'm sorry. I ended the call and let the apartment be quiet around me for a full minute. The baby hiccuped in even time. I could almost hear his rhythm against the radiator's hiss. When the quiet clipped, it was because my intercom buzzed. I flinched, then checked the monitor. No one stood there. The camera showed the empty vestibule, the door wedged open with a flyer. I went down cautiously, belly first, like plodding into an ocean. On the lobby table sat a small cardboard package, no return address, my name in block letters. I considered leaving it. Curiosity won. Upstairs, I slid it open. Inside, a plastic sleeve containing a county clerk printout, marriage license application for Ethan Bennett and Lily Rosenthal, applied for the morning of our hearing, not approved because the clerk had flagged previous marriage not dissolved. A sticky note, Lily's handwriting, perched on top. Soon. Below it, another sheet. Petition for name change. Lily Rosenthal, Lily Bennett. Filed the day after the hearing, granted in a different county by a judge whose signature looped like a flourish. My heart thudded. She had changed her name before marriage, in a county that didn't cross-reference the license, to show up in court with a new surname as if the word itself conferred rights. I laughed once sharp, then put the papers beside the HSA statement. Fraud wasn't just their strategy, it was their habit. I wrote to Maya. They tried to marry the morning of the hearing. License stalled. She changed her name elsewhere the next day. Papers in hand. Maya replied, pattern plus intent. Also perjury risk if she used that name in sworn statements pre-change. We'll use it. I was tired. My back ached. The baby was doing his evening calisthenics. But the second twist had rewired something in me. I wasn't the one under a microscope anymore. I was the one holding the lens. Before bed, I opened the blue notebook. Under today's date, I wrote, Twist 2. She was my intern. He is committing benefits fraud. They tried to legalize a fiction and tripped on paper. I don't have to shout. I just have to show. Then, because names had become weapons, I whispered to my son a name I hadn't said aloud. A quiet, strong syllable that belonged to my grandfather who fixed radios and believed in justice that arrives eventually. It felt like placing a hand on a map and finding home. If Ethan wanted clarity, he was about to get a kind, the court understands. Timestamps, forms, signatures that don't match, and a trail of receipts that spell motive. They thought my softness meant I wouldn't fight. They forgot that softness is what wraps a fist. The week after the compliance call, something in me shifted. Not loudly, not in fireworks, more like the slow, certain click of a lock finally turning. For weeks, I had felt like prey. Now, for the first time, I felt like a witness preparing to testify. It started small. I put on real clothes instead of sweatpants, black maternity dress, hair pulled back, a coat that fit around my belly because Mrs. Klein had stitched an extender into the zipper. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I didn't look broken. I looked expectant, not just of a baby, but of justice. Maya noticed immediately when I walked into her office, binder hugged to my side like a briefcase. Emma, she said, smiling, you look like someone ready to win. I'm tired of looking like someone waiting to lose, I answered, and meant it. We spread the evidence across her conference table. Kara's statement, the HSA fraud receipts, Lily's intern files, the name change petition. The paper made a satisfying stack. Here's what happens next, Maya said. We'll file a motion to dismiss his custody petition with prejudice based on fraud and harassment. We'll also notify his employer formally. If corporate compliance verifies, they may suspend or terminate him. That undercuts his credibility in family court. And if the DA bites on the forged consent, he's facing criminal charges. And Lily? I asked. Her name games don't give her parental rights, but they show deceit. Courts notice deceit. I exhaled steady. So we don't just defend, we counter. Exactly, Maya said. Offense now. That afternoon, I went to Mount Sinai for my 36-week appointment. Nurse Gwen greeted me with her Fleetwood Mac hum. She measured the baby, checked the heartbeat, strong, steady. You're different, she said, adjusting the monitor. How? Straighter, she said simply. You're carrying more than a baby, you're carrying yourself again. I smiled, small but true. Before I left, Miss Levin, the hospital privacy officer, pulled me aside. We've flagged your chart heavily, she said. Break glass alerts, visitor restrictions. But I want you to know, our security team traced the Harborview logins. Some came from your ex-husband's work IP. We've shared that with their compliance team. I swallowed satisfaction like warm tea. Thank you. Walking home, the city felt different. The same gray sidewalks, the same impatient horns, but I wasn't shrinking anymore. I walked slower, yes, belly first, but taller. People stepped aside without me apologizing. At my building, Greg the super called out. Miss Hart saw the guy again. Tried to sweet-talk his way in yesterday. I told him locks don't listen to charm. I grinned for the first time in weeks. Thank you, Greg. Upstairs, I opened the decals box I had rescued from the trash chute. I peeled one letter off, O, and pressed it to a blank journal page, then another, L. Piece by piece, I rebuilt the name in silence until it spelled Oliver again. Not because I had given it back to them, but because it was mine to choose or refuse. Ownership is power. I slipped the letters into the notebook pocket and whispered, "You're mine, little one, always mine." That evening, I had a video session with Dr. Wells. She tilted her head, studying me through the screen. "Something's different," she said. "I don't feel hunted," I told her. "I feel like I have a case, like I've turned from victim to plaintiff." She smiled. "That's the shift I was waiting for. Remember, identity theft, medical forgery, fraud, those are his legacies now. Yours is carrying life." When we ended, I brushed my hair longer than usual, painted my nails a calm shade of navy, and sat with a posture that would read in photos as control. Because I knew the next hearing wasn't just about facts. It was about image. The court needed to see me not as fragile, but as centered. Sure enough, the next morning, a notice arrived. Emergency hearing scheduled. Motion to dismiss custody petition. Date, 1 week. I closed my eyes, hand on my belly. "We're ready," I whispered. Mrs. Klein knocked, as if on cue, holding up a tiny sweater she'd finished knitting. "For the big day," she said. I laughed softly. "Which big day?" "Both," she said, eyes twinkling. That night, I sorted my evidence binder into tabs: medical fraud, benefits fraud, witness statements, harassment. Each plastic sleeve whispered when I turned it. Order felt like armor. I wrote in the blue notebook. Today, I stood up straighter. He thought breaking me would prove me unfit, but standing again proves something stronger. He doesn't know resilience looks like a woman with swollen ankles and a binder. I underlined it twice. When I switched off the lamp, the baby pressed a slow, steady kick against my palm. Not frantic, not restless, just strong, like he knew his mother had stopped hiding. The morning of the emergency hearing, New York was all hard edges, cold bright sky, frost clinging to grates. A city that didn't care who was winning in Family Court Part 14. I wore the black maternity dress again, hair pulled back, nails navy. I slid the blue notebook into my tote and the evidence binder under my arm. When the elevator doors opened onto the marble corridor, Maya was already there, coat over her arm, eyebrows like calm arrows. "You ready?" she asked. "I'm done being ready," I said. "I'm here." Ethan stood down the hall, suit precise, jaw clean. Lily's cream coat floated beside him like a flag. He lifted his hand in a gesture that once meant marriage. I kept walking. Inside, the courtroom felt the same, wood polish, the soft shuffle of shoes, but I was not the same woman who had sat here weeks ago swallowing a temporary restriction. Judge Kaplan took the bench. The clerk read the caption. Maya rose. "Your Honor, we move to dismiss Mr. Bennett's petition with prejudice," she began, voice even. "On grounds of fraud upon the court, harassment, and misuse of protected medical information. We also seek a protective order, sole medical decision-making for Ms. Hart, and sanctions." Ethan's lawyer pushed back his chair and stood like a man who loved his voice. "Your Honor, my client acted in good faith." Maya didn't look at him. She placed a document on the lectern like a card in a trick she'd practiced. Exhibit 1, disclosure logs from Harborview showing access via proxy email not belonging to Ms. Hart, and scanned consent with a forged signature. Exhibit 2, sworn statement from Kara Delaney, former Harborview employee, attesting that Mr. Bennett and Miss Rosenthal, also known as Miss Bennett, brought pages torn from Miss Hart's pregnancy journal to supplement intake, and stated their intent to prove she's unfit. Exhibit 3, benefits records showing Mr. Bennett added Miss Beater Rosenthal as spouse and an expected dependent, named Oliver Bennett to his plan, and charged HSA for consumer goods for a nursery, all while still legally married to Ms. Hart. Exhibit 4, hospital access logs, and a letter from Mount Sinai's privacy officer detailing unauthorized chart access. Exhibit 5, county clerk records reflecting an attempted marriage license and subsequent name change designed to misrepresent status to this court. The judge's gaze slowed. "Miss Delaney is present?" she asked. Kara stood from the back bench, scrubs peeking under a coat, spine straight. "Yes, Your Honor." "Step forward," Judge Kaplan said. "Sworn testimony only." Kara's voice shook on the first sentence, then steadied. She described the intake, the photocopies, the smugness. "The words will prove she's unfit." When she finished, the courtroom was very quiet, the kind of silence that has weight. Ethan's lawyer tried to recover. Even if there were missteps, Maya placed another letter on the lectern. Exhibit 6, correspondence from Mr. All, Bennett's employer's corporate compliance office, confirming an active investigation into benefits fraud and unauthorized handling of protected health information via plan access. The judge read quickly, lips pressed. She set the letter down like it was hot. Mr. Bennett, she said, turning her attention to him. Do you dispute any of these exhibits? He stood, palms open in a picture of reason. Your Honor, I wanted information. Information is not fraud. I have a right to know if my child. You do not have a right to forge consent, to add a non-spouse's spouse, or to parade private journal entries to strangers, Judge Kaplan said, voice flat. And you certainly do not have a right to weaponize the administrative burdens of pregnancy against the woman carrying your child. Lily's eyes flicked to the floor. The cream coat looked suddenly like something that could stain. Regarding Miss Rosenthal, the judge added, this court is unconcerned with your chosen surname. It does not grant you standing. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Ethan's lawyer tried one last angle. Miss Hart has demonstrated instability. Counsel, the judge said, women experiencing anxiety during late-term pregnancy as a result of harassment do not become unfit. They become mothers under stress. My throat tightened. I stared at the wood grain on the table because looking at Ethan's face would pull me somewhere unhelpful. Judge Kaplan stacked the exhibits, tapped them into a neat pile, then spoke the words that shifted the floor. The petition for custodial review is dismissed with prejudice, she said. Mr. Bennett's exhibits are stricken as fraudulent or improperly obtained. Miss Hart is granted sole medical decision-making authority pending further order. A temporary protective order is issued. Mr. Bennett shall not contact Miss Hart outside counsel, shall not approach her residence or workplace, and shall not attempt to access any medical facility where she receives care. Miss Rosenthal is included. Violations will be referred to the district attorney. Additionally, this court is transmitting the record to the appropriate authorities for review of potential criminal conduct and to the Office of Court Administration regarding the misuse of benefits. Lily sucked in a breath. Ethan stared at the judge as if the bench had moved. Finally, Judge Kaplan said, softer, Miss Hart, your hospital will be notified that only your listed support person may be present at delivery. That person is not Mr. Bennett unless you say so. I nodded. Words stuck behind relief. Counsel, the judge concluded, we are adjourned. The gavel's soft rap sounded like a door closing. Out in the hallway, Maya squeezed my elbow. Breathe it in, she said. I'm trying, I said, laughing and crying at once. Ethan and Lily stepped toward us, the protective order not yet cold on paper. A court officer moved between us, palm out. Ethan's mouth twitched. This isn't over, he said, voice too low for the officer to catch and just loud enough for me. I tilted my head. That's the first true thing you've said in months, I said quietly. It isn't over, but this part is. We walked. My legs felt both light and heavy. Halfway down the marble stairs, my body stood me still without asking. A hot pressure bloomed low, a deep ache radiating around my back. I breathed. The ache held. I took one more step and felt the unmistakable warm rush. Water. Maya's hand found mine. Emma? She asked, voice switching registers. I looked down at the small, spreading wet on the black dress and laughed, not because it was funny, but because the timing felt like the universe rolling its eyes. Apparently, I said, my son prefers dramatic beats. Elevator, Maya said, already in motion. Now. By the time we reached the lobby, the contractions had found their rhythm, tight, insistent, not unkind. Maya flagged a cab with a lawyer's authority. We slid in. She called Mount Sinai while I breathed. We're coming, she said into the phone. Yes, her water broke. Yes, protective order in place. The driver glanced in the mirror, eyes wide. Hospital? He asked, as if there were any other option. Mount Sinai, Maya and I said together. The city blurred by in winter light. Between contractions, I watched buildings I knew turn into scenery. My hands found the blue notebook in my tote. I pressed it to my belly. I didn't open it. I didn't need words. My body was writing without a pen. At triage, the nurse at the desk saw my face in my stomach and said, "We have a room." Miss Levin appeared like a well-timed plot device, tablet in hand. "We received the court order," she said, calm. Visitor list is locked. No one enters without your yes. Mrs. Klein, I said, breathless between peaks. She's my yes. On her way, Maya said, phone already to her ear. I texted her from the cab. Another contraction wrapped around me like a belt. Gwen arrived, elastic monitor bands ready, Fleetwood Mac humming under her breath. Let's hear him, she said, and the monitor filled with the same gallop that had been my metronome for weeks. Strong. Eager. Here. In the brief quiet between two waves, my phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, administrative leave notice. I opened it because power sometimes looks like pettiness. Mr. Bennett has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending the outcome of a compliance investigation. Access to all company systems is revoked. The email wasn't meant for me, but I was CC'd because compliance had opened a case file that included my documentation. I showed Maya. She nodded once, satisfied. My stomach tightened again. I closed my eyes and let the wave move through me. When it eased, I whispered, I'm okay. Gwen smiled. You're more than okay. You're doing it. The door opened and Mrs. Klein slipped in, real shoes on, cheeks pink from cold. She took my hand like she'd been doing it all my life. Night is just day with less light, she said, and I laughed, then cried. Maya squeezed my shoulder. I'll camp in the waiting area and keep the binder safe, she said. Call me if you need me to be the mean one. I can be the mean one, I said, grinning through a grimace, but thank you. Outside the room, I heard a commotion. A man's voice, too loud, using the word father like a password. A security guard's voice, calm and firm. Ms. Levin's voice, cooler than glass. My heart kicked but didn't race. The monitor kept its steady gallop. Gwen met my eyes. They can't come in, she said, as if reading my fear out loud. They can't even get on this floor. The contraction took me then, full and bright and not asking permission. I let it. When it receded, I rested my cheek on the cool sheet and thought of the judge's voice. Sole medical decision-making authority. I thought of Kara's shaky courage. Of Marcus pretending to read the sports page. Of Rena from compliance, and Miss Levin and Gwen's hum and Mrs. Klein's soup, and my mother booking a flight and Maya's binder. A chorus. My chorus. I reached for the blue notebook, flipped it open to a blank page, and wrote 3 words with a hand that didn't shake. We are ready. Another wave came. I met it. Somewhere in the hall, elevator doors opened and closed, the city moving, indifferent, and here. The world did not pause for my justice or my labor. But in this room, justice had moved enough to make space, and my body had decided the rest. Between contractions, I whispered to my son, the name I had saved for this moment, the one that belonged to a man who fixed radios and believed in eventual justice. A name said into warm air, not into a registry. A name no one could steal because I was breathing it into a life. If they wanted clarity, they were getting it. Signed by a judge, enforced by a hospital, and written in the oldest ink in the world, a mother's labor. Labor blurred time. Hours became minutes, became forever. Gwen's voice wove through contractions. A steady hum. Mrs. Klein held my hand like a lifeline. The monitor traced a heartbeat that kept me tethered when I thought I might float away. When the final push came, I gritted my teeth and thought of every page I had written, every night I had whispered to my belly, every stolen signature and every forged form. And then, suddenly, cry. Bright, raw, insistent. He was here. The nurse lifted him onto my chest, slick and warm, fists clenched like he already knew what fighting meant. My tears fell onto his tiny cap. Hi, I whispered, voice shaking. It's me. I'm your mom. I whispered his name, the one I'd saved, the one not written on any registry or benefit form or fraudulent application. A name that belonged to justice and radios and survival. My grandfather's name, my son's name. In that moment, nothing else existed. Not Ethan, not Lily, not courts or compliance or forged consents, just the weight of him, heavier and lighter than the world. But the world didn't stay paused. By the time dawn lit the hospital blinds, Maya arrived, binder in hand, face bright. He's perfect, she said, looking at the baby in my arms. Then her lawyer voice returned, and Ethan is in deeper trouble. Corporate confirmed fraud. His access at the company is revoked permanently. HR forwarded their report to the DA. Charges likely, identity theft, benefits fraud, medical forgery. He could be facing time. Good, I said softly. Not with triumph, but with closure. Later that day, Judge Kaplan herself called into my hospital room for an emergency telehearing. Rare, but warranted. Maya placed her phone on speaker. Miss Hart, the judge said, "Congratulations, we have reviewed the compliance findings. Mr. Bennett's custody petition remains dismissed. A permanent protective order is entered. Sole custody and medical decision-making rights are awarded to you. Visitation rights are suspended pending criminal proceedings. The court thanks you for your documentation and patience." My throat closed. "Thank you, Your Honor." Beside me, Mrs. Klein wiped her eyes like he was her grandson, too. 2 weeks later, headlines carried the rest. Tech finance exec charged with benefits fraud, identity theft. Lily was named in articles as co-conspirator. Photos showed her leaving the courthouse, coat no longer cream but gray, face pinched. They looked small now. Their empire shrunk to paperwork, with criminal codes at the bottom. Meanwhile, my life grew. Mom arrived from Cleveland with casseroles and lullabies. Mrs. Klein came over nightly to hold the baby so I could shower. Gwen visited off-shift once, humming Fleetwood Mac while rocking him like he was her nephew. And Maya became more than lawyer. She became friend, the kind who brought coffee and never asked if I was strong, only if I was ready. At night, when the baby slept on my chest, I opened the blue notebook. Pages were missing still, but I filled new ones. "Dear little one, today you arrived. You'll grow up knowing your name is yours. You'll grow up knowing lies can't erase truth. You'll grow up knowing your mother fought and won." One evening, weeks later, I walked to the park with the stroller. The sky was pale gold, winter loosening its grip. People glanced at me, at us, some smiling, some not. For once I didn't shrink. I walked taller. Because I knew who I was now. Not the woman who almost drowned under forged papers, but the woman who had surfaced with her child in her arms. At the bench, I whispered his name again, proud and whole. He stirred, tiny fist opening like trust. Behind me, the city moved on. Headlines would fade, court files would gather dust. Ethan and Lily would face their consequences in rooms with locks I didn't need to guard anymore. But here was my ending. Not a fairy tale. Better, real. A mother, a child, a future. I closed my eyes and breathed. For the first time in months, the air tasted like mine again. 2 weeks after bringing him home, the apartment no longer echoed. It hummed. Bottles lined the drying rack like soldiers. A tiny sweater hung on the chair back, uneven stitches from Mrs. Klein's hands. My mother sang lullabies from the kitchen, the same half-forgotten ones she sang to me when I was small. And in the bassinet by the window, under the soft wash of winter light, my son slept with his fist curled against his cheek. I sat at the table with the blue notebook open. The missing pages were still gone, but the rest was filling again. Tonight I wrote, "Dear little one, when you are old enough, you'll hear stories about how you came into this world. Some people tried to tell a version where you weren't mine. But the truth is written in every breath we took together before you were born. The truth is that you were loved into existence and fought for and protected. The truth is that you are home." I paused, pen resting. Out the window, New York moved on. Cabs rushing, sirens in the distance, steam rising from manholes. The city didn't care that one woman had survived betrayal and courtrooms and forged papers. But in this room, survival mattered. The baby stirred, a soft whimper. I lifted him, his warmth spilling against me, and rocked gently. His eyes fluttered open, dark and deep, and for the first time I felt not just the relief of winning, but the peace of beginning. Mom appeared in the doorway, holding a mug of tea. "You're doing well," she said quietly. "Some days I don't feel like it." "That's how I know you are," she said. Behind her, Mrs. Klein shuffled in, knitting needles clicking. "He'll need a blanket for spring," she said. "I'll start today." I smiled, overwhelmed not by fear anymore, but by the abundance of small kindnesses. Maya texted a photo just then, her cat asleep on my evidence binder. "Justice is napping," she wrote. I laughed until the baby blinked up at me, as if to ask what was funny. Later, when the apartment dimmed, I whispered his name again, the one no one could steal. It felt steady on my tongue, an anchor in a sea I'd finally crossed. I looked down at him, cheeks round, lips pursed in sleep, and whispered one last note into the quiet. "They thought they could write our story, but the ending belongs to us. And this isn't an ending at all. It's our beginning."